Hello and welcome to part 12 of the Jeep tutorial series. This is David Ward. When last I left you in part 11, we had gone through and painted the texture map for the main body of the Jeep. Now, I know I said I was going to go ahead and jump on the wheels and tires, but there's one more thing that I want to do with the general texture, and that's to bake the Ambient Occlusion, which is, if I turn the texture off here, and we just do a render using if we go to our world settings, let me make sure my screencast keys are going, there we go. We turn on Ambient Occlusion, and ray trace is usually fine, so we'll just leave it on that. If I look through my camera, the 0 button on the numpad, and do a render, you can see the material in here now because we're in texture paint mode. If I jump out to object mode, it disappears. And if I hit F12, we're going to render the Ambient Occlusion only. Well, actually, I guess it'll have the lights on it as well, but it usually takes a little bit longer to render the Ambient Occlusion than just a standard render. But anyways, you can see it adds some darkness, kind of the bounces of the light and shadows. It adds darkness in all the little nooks and crannies and wherever there's something that's nearby, like you can see here in the tire well, where the tire is nearby the fender right there, it makes it darker. So it's the proximity makes it have a darker shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Ambient Occlusion map and I'm going to bake it out using Blender's bake system. I'm going to bake it out to a material or to a texture map. So I'm just going to go New Image, and we'll just leave it at 1024 by 1024. And I'm going to go to my camera settings. Right here, the render settings. Scroll all the way down till you see the bake. And go ahead and expand that guy out. Scroll down there. And we want to bake the mode of the Ambient Occlusion. So if I go ahead and hit bake now, it's going to bake out that Ambient Occlusion that we just rendered. Or it's going to, I guess, probably calculate it again. But you can see the progress bar right here. It's taken it a little while, but should pick up here soon. You can see it start filling the map over here, the new one. So any day now. Let me go ahead and pause recording while that's going. So, oh, there we go. Okay. So it was taking a while. So you can see it baked out all of those darkness passes, like around the grill and in the fender, like where the tires and everything are. And it just made it a little darker. So I'm going to go ahead and save this image, save as, and we're just going to name it Jeep Texture. We'll call it, instead of texture, we'll name it Jeep AO for Ambient Occlusion. JPEG image quality, go ahead and bump that up to 100, go ahead and save the image. Okay, now there's two things we can do with this. First off, we can come over here into our material settings and go to our textures and go ahead and turn that Jeep texture back on. And we need to make sure we refresh over here. Okay, so we need to tell it to use the actual, I guess we need to load in the Jeep texture. So it's using that one. I guess when I saved the scene, it just didn't save the path to the texture there. So I had to just reset it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a new texture, and it's going to be image or movie. There we go. And now I just click the little thumbnail there, and we can say, well, I guess it replaced the AO, so we'll just open that one. Textures Jeep AO, open that. Okay, so now we need to tell that to the mapping coordinates to be UV. And if I collapse some of these guys so we can kind of see what we're doing a little bit better here in the preview window. If I set the preview to both, we can see the actual image, or actually just say material there. Okay, so now we have, don't know what that means, X that out. Now we have the AO, we'll go ahead and what happened there? There we go, click the wrong thing. Okay, so go ahead and name this Jeep AO, just so we have some uniformity in here. Okay, so right now, opposite of the modifier stack, which reads from the top to the bottom, the material texture set kind of reads from the bottom to the top. So anything below this will be loaded on top. So since we have the AO texture loaded after the regular Jeep texture, it's going to show that one. If we were to render this now, we can go ahead and turn the ambient occlusion off since we baked that. If we go ahead and render now, okay, turn that off. I'm not sure why this is taking so long to render today. I guess I don't have lights set up. No lights at all, really. Must have deleted them by accident. Okay, no problem. We can just add a new one in. So just come over here into our 3D window, Shift A, and we will add a lamp. I'm going to use, let's just say a point lamp. And I'll drag that up here. Just move it over to the side, about like so. Go to our lamp settings, and let's turn the fall off to inverse linear. There we go. And if we set this to texture shaded, we can get an idea of how bright that light is. Good. Okay. So right now it's showing the texture, the green actual correct texture that we painted on here, but that's only because it's loaded over here in this window here. If I tab into edit mode, or grab the Jeep, tab into edit mode, select everything, and then if I load the AO right there, then it'll show that one in our preview window here. But anyways, if you want to see the actual texture that you're working on, the material, we have to go to GLSL, and then it'll load that, and it'll show it a little better. So you can test that here if we go to our materials and then textures. If we turn off the Jeep AO, it goes back. So anyways, like I was saying, it's loading from bottom to top, so if we render it out, it's only going to show that Jeep AO. There we go. So it looks almost like it did when we just rendered out the ambient occlusion without the lamp, except for on the tires and things like that. So what we're going to do, like I said, there's two ways we can use this. First off is we can just tell this map here, instead of just being on there on top of the green one, we can use some layer blending. Right now it's set to mix, and that just puts it on top of each other. So if we set to, say, multiply, you can see it takes the white or the lighter areas out. I set that to both. Well, it's hard to see there. I guess that'll work. There we go. If we set that to, like I said, multiply, it's going to take the lighter colors and make them transparent, so it's overlaid on top of the green. So you can see there's the green, and it's overlaid on top. So now, if we rendered, it'll be a mixture of these two. So that looks a little bit more realistic. You get dirt and things in the nooks and crannies. So we can do that, or like I said, there's two ways we can do it. The other way is essentially the same thing. Open up Photoshop here, get it in the right window, resize it. Okay, that'll work. Let's open up both of those guys. Open them up. And like I said, it's essentially the same thing. We're just going to drag this into the same window. Just line it up. Let's set the view, the snap to on, so it's snapped perfectly on top. So now we go to multiply, and it's the same basic concept, the same thing. We can go through a few different layer styles here, so maybe we can find a better one. That one doesn't look too bad. It kind of makes it look like a frog. We don't want the bright green, so let's just keep going. The soft light might work. So let's try that soft light. Maybe just make it a little more transparent. So you can kind of see it. It helps break up the monotony of that solid green paint job. So if I turn that on, you can see how much difference it makes. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Actually, let me go ahead and flatten it. Layer, flatten. Control-Shift-S, and I'm going to name it Jeep Texture 2. So I'll go ahead and save that. Okay. Minimize that. And now let's go ahead and turn that AO off. And we'll go to the first texture map there. Go to image, and we're going to load up that Jeep texture map too. Go and accept that. And we're going to go and escape out of our render here. Now you can kind of see it's got the subtle variations there a little bit better. So now if we were to render, it won't be quite as dark as it was, and it'll have the subtle differences. Okay, so now first thing really pops into my head is it's way too shiny, so I'm going to go ahead and set that specular level down. Let's set the intensity about 0.15, and then the hardness, we'll make that about 30. So if we turn on one of these other displays, we can get a better idea of what that's going to look like. That's probably about right. I'm going to render out one more time. Okay, so that's a little better. It's more of an olive drab rather than an olive shiny. So, okay, so that's the general way to bake the ambient occlusion and then apply it to the texture. So let's go back to solid view. I'm going to grab one of the tires now, and I think we already unwrapped it. They should all be unwrapped already, so we really only need to make one texture that we can then, or one material that we can then apply to each tire. So I want to get everything else out of my way, so I'm going to go Shift H, select the tire, and Shift H, so that'll hide everything else that's not selected. So now, if I go to texture paint mode, we can go ahead and start painting on the tire. So one thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and turn on since I closed Blender out and opened it again since last time, I need to set the layers, the texture paint layer manager, turn that back on, and scroll down here, and let's go ahead and create a new material, or a new texture map for our tire. The 1024 should be fine. Go ahead and say OK. Go into edit mode so we can actually apply that new one. There we go. Okay, so right now it's black, but that's fine. I don't want the rubber to be black, I just want it to be a dark gray, so I'm going to put that 3D cursor right back in there. Actually, you can click here and set everything to 0, and then you can just run your slider up a little bit. If you hover over one of the numbers, you don't have to click in there and select what's in the box. You can just hover over and hit Control C, and then hover over the others and hit Control V. It copies and pastes. You don't have to actually select the numbers there. You can just hover over. So you can see what color that is right there. That's a little bit too light, so I'm going to go about right there. Okay, and that's going to be the color of our tires. So let me set my brush size up quite a bit more. And let's go over in this window here. It'll be a little more accurate, or a little easier that way. Instead of view, we're going to go to paint. So now we can paint in this window as well. So I'm just going to paint over the tires, maybe make my brush a little bigger. Now, one thing to note, I think someone asks on YouTube, if your image, right now I'm painting on 1024 by 1024. It's a nice small image, so things are going really quick, really smoothly. I can paint without any lagging. But the bigger you make the image, the more it's going to lag. So if this was, twice as much, 2048 by 2048, it would probably still go fairly smooth, but it wouldn't be nearly as quick as this 1024. And then if you double that to go 4096 by 4096, that's going to lag even more. So if you don't really need a big image for your texture map, you should go with the smallest. It'll load faster, it'll render faster, and it'll just be a better experience altogether. So, okay, so I got the tires colored. I'm going to go ahead and color the rims, and if we look at some of our reference, you can see that they're just black rubber with the olive drab on the rim as well. So that's the way we're going to paint this. So I'm just going to paint in here, and I'm going to set the curve of my brush. Instead of having that gradial fall off there, I'm going to go ahead and set it to have a pretty sharp fall off. So now you can see it's got a very sharp fall off. So that'll help me when I get in here next to the tire part. I don't want to accidentally overlap with any green onto the rubber part. So that helps keep those separated. Okay, so we'll just paint all of this. I know when you're in kindergarten, they say to stay within the lines when you're coloring, but it doesn't really make a difference here because the blender's only going to take what's in the lines, so it doesn't matter if you're outside, unless you're overlapping into another outline, and then it could be a problem, but otherwise it's just fine. Okay, so now we have our wheel and tire. Good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing that I did. I'm going to bake the ambient occlusion to this. Let me go ahead and save this image first. Save as image, and we'll say wheel tire, wheel dash tire maybe, wheel tire underscore texture. Okay, go ahead and save that. Make sure it's a JPEG. Set the quality all the way up. Now save as image. Good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new image. Okay. Again, 1024 by 1024 is fine. And we're going to go ahead and bake the ambient occlusion on this one as well. So let's go ahead and bake there. And we'll see what happens. Surely it won't take as long as it did with the... Well, maybe since it's in the scene, it's hidden, but the Jeep texture is hidden. So looks like it's still taking into account the proximity of the hidden mesh there. So what I want to do, I don't want this dark spot here on top. I want it to be completely separated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come out of texture paint mode, and let's just move this wheel to its own layer. So we'll just move it to that layer there. Go ahead and turn off that layer, and now I'm going to go ahead and bake this ambient occlusion again. Since it's on a different layer, it won't have the proximity of the vehicle itself. So we can get that in there, and now we got some nice fall off there. So if I was to go to texture paint mode again, actually let me go ahead and save this one, save as image, and we'll call this one wheel tire AO, just like we did on the Jeep texture, and set to JPEG 100%. Go ahead and save as image. There we go. And now we'll go ahead and jump into Photoshop again and do the same thing. Let's open new. There we go. Open those guys. Okay. And I'm just going to click and drag this over to there. And snap is still turned on, so that's good to go. And what did we use over here? Let me undo that. Soft light. Okay. So let's use soft light again. And maybe knock it down a bit. About 50% maybe. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. I have keyboard shortcuts set up. But you can either go over here, flatten image, by right-clicking flatten image, or you can do it through here, flatten image. So as you can see, my keyboard shortcut is Alt-Shift-Control-F. So that's quite the quite the handful to push those buttons, but it works. So Control-Shift-S to save as, and we'll call this wheel texture 2. Okay, go ahead and save that. Okay. Minimize, and let's go ahead and come over here, and we're going to create a new material for it. We'll call this one wheel tire. Go to our texture settings and say a new one there, image or movie, and we'll go ahead and open up our textures, wheel tire texture 2. Open that. Go ahead and set that to be UV coordinates there. Color all set. So now we're in texture mode, but we don't have a lamp turned on this layer. So if we turn on the other layer that it was back on that has the lamp, you can see now we have our wheel and tire. But it's way too shiny, just like the Jeep itself was. So let's set the intensity, the same thing, 0.15, and then 30 hardness. So you can kind of see the outline of the ambient occlusion there and the treads of the tire. Okay, so now, like I mentioned in part 11, I wanted to go ahead and throw some mud and stuff like that on here. So let's try that out. Let's go to our texture paint, and let's go ahead and load up the texture 2 in here. Wheel tire texture too. There we go. So now when we paint on here, like if I just say just a mud texture there, if I do bloop, just paint across that. Okay, I have to actually set it to that in the edit mode. So now if I was just to paint across there, you can see, boom, it adds it on there just fine. Okay, so now our paint layer manager. We have the color one already set. So I'm going to add, I was going to go ahead and add a bump, but we'll just go ahead and put the mud on there first, and then we'll add a little bit of bump to it. So what I want to do, I don't want a solid mud patch like that. I want to just kind of a random brush. So I'm going to go ahead and set the texture to, I guess I'll need to create a new one. We'll say new, and it just creates kind of a cloud texture. So now if I come over here, actually just go to our render settings and then textures. Nope. Let's see, how do I guess what I just need to do to be able to edit that texture is just come over here and add it to the slot so I can change some of the settings. Then we'll just get rid of it after we do that. So I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to change the contrast up, set the brightness down a little bit. About like so. So now if I paint, it looks a little better. But it's adding black instead of transparency. So I want to go ahead and say show alpha, and then it's doing the same thing. Let's see here. Say blend, add alpha. To be honest, I don't do this type of work in Blender that often, so I'm a little rusty on the technique here. Mix tile there. Okay, let me play with this a little bit. I'm going to pause recording. I'm going to play with this a little bit and kind of figure out how to get where it's black, painting black on there. I want that to be transparent. So I'm going to pause recording, figure that out. I'll be right back. Okay, that was easy enough. Figured it out quickly. Instead of painting our texture on there, because that's just painting the texture, we don't want to actually paint the texture. We want it to be kind of a mask, like a stencil type of thing. So I'm going to undo that, turn that off of my texture settings here, and go to texture mask. That's what we need to do. And set that to texture. So now when I paint, you can see it does exactly what I was wanting it to do. Okay, so let's come over here and set the settings a little bit more bright. So I'm going to set the brightness up instead of the darkness. Still get the contrast going. Now if I paint on there, it looks a little bit better. Okay, so let's make that brown a little less saturated, a little more dryish, dusty. So we'll set that kind of a grayish, tannish brown. And let's go ahead and set the curve to have that nice fall off again. So if I just kind of paint in here, like so, it's a little better. But that's a little too dark. I'm going to set the strength down to about 0.5. And now we'll come in here a little tighter and kind of just paint some of that dust on there. Maybe even like along the treads of the tires. We can't hardly see the edges, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's come out of texture paint mode. Grab that lamp that we made. I guess it's hidden right now. I'm going to hit Alt-H. And then let's grab the Jeep itself and hide him so he's out of the way. I'm going to take this lamp and I'm going to duplicate it over to the other side so it's lighting up both sides. So, looking okay, but it's not lighting up the bottom now. So, select both of them, Shift D, duplicate it down to the bottom. So now we can kind of see all angles of our tire. Okay, so now let's grab that guy again, jump back to texture paint, and let's just paint maybe on the treads. Make our brush a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit less strength. Just kind of paint on here. About like so, maybe a little bit in here. Now this would be handy to go ahead and turn off all of these three items here. You can see it's kind of acting as a stencil itself if I just leave those off. Okay, so I think that'll work okay. Now we'll just go ahead and save that. Save image. There we go. And you know what? I kind of like to do the same type of thing on the actual Jeep itself. Give it some dirt and mud. So let's come back out of texture paint mode, and we're going to unhide the Jeep. I'm going to grab him now, jump into texture paint mode, and let's make sure we have that Jeep texture 2. Not finding it here. Let's open it up. For some reason, it should be visible over there. So, anyways, there we go. So now, if I start painting on there, we can see it. You can see it across the hood there. So this will add a little bit of more realism to it. If we go to side view, let's add some dirt, mud up here in the fender area. Maybe adjust. Okay, we'll have to select the tire so we can adjust the texture of the paintbrush here. Sorry, 25 minutes in. This one's running a little bit over, but we're almost there, I think. Getting some quality info in here. So set this brush size, or the cloud size, a little bit higher, and then I'll grab the Jeep again and go ahead and... Okay, it's already set to texture mode. It's texture paint. So let's go to our tools, make sure everything's good, and maybe set our radius up a little bigger. And just add some mud. This Jeep's seen a lot of action. And okay, that's all turned off. I was making sure I was painting on both sides there. Make sure we paint that fender, because that's what it's there for, is to help keep mud from flinging everywhere. Okay. Not sure why it's doing that. With all these turned off, it should just be painting straight through. Okay. So get that a little bit more. Then maybe, you can keep going with the detail, maybe add a little bit darker dirt, mud in there. And that'll help kind of break up that solid color. Then maybe on our top view we can paint in the bed here. They've been hauling a lot of dirty cargo, and then their feet's always dirty in the floorboard. Okay, so that'll work. Let's go ahead and save that. I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new image. I'll call this Jeep Texture 3, just in case I want to clean it back up later. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then make sure we apply it to our... Okay, so it's already set. Since we saved it as Jeep 3, that's the one it kept in there. So we'll go back to object mode. Alright, so let's grab our tire and get rid of this texture here. Go ahead and X that out. It still should be in Blender somewhere in this scene. It may not, but we'll worry about that later. So go ahead and select this wheel, tire, and go ahead and turn that wheel tire texture onto it. Let's go ahead and set that on all of these. And finally the spare wheel tire. There we go. Okay, so our Jeep is looking pretty sharp. Let's go to our perspective view, get a little bit better angle. Now, if you wanted to break the repetition up, I guess it works in this case because all the wheels are going to be on the ground, which is probably where they would be sitting in a puddle of mud or something. But if you wanted to break it up, you could turn this into a second material and add a little bit more variation, or you could just rotate it a little bit, and then that'll make it look a little different than all the rest of the other four. So just rotate it on the x-axis. Okay, so alright, looking good. I'm going to go ahead and... Wow, this one turned into 30 minutes. Apologize for the length of this one. As I've said before, I like to keep it around 20 minutes apiece, but anyways, we got pretty far in this one, and part 13 we'll jump in and probably start working on the rest of the textures, like the seats and the gas can, and then just make some materials for the other parts. So that's going to be it for part 12. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in part 13.